Hello and welcome back to Select All from Greg Adams, and I'm Greg Adams. And I did tell you that I was gonna make 3 videos. Well, I reconsidered because, you know, I wanted to show you how powerful SQL can be and what all you can do in this particular section in terms of sending emails and sending emails with attachments, and then we'll deploy it after the fact. So this might continue on to be 3 4 more videos, but I did bring a special guest today. I reached out to him to help me with the code. He knows way more SQL than I do, and he also mentors me. So I like to say, everyone say hello to Martin Lazarus. Martin, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm good. So there's a lot of gears rolling with this code, and we worked on it last night. And there's several different kinds of configurations you have to do to before you even start to do it. And most of the users that are following my videos are going to have to do the same thing that we did. So the first thing we had to do, because if you tried to add more attachments or tried to do this XB command shell straight out of the box, it's not going to do it. And the reason is there's a security issue with it. It's basically opening up a command window and running commands in that. Well, SQL can do that too. So it's funny because SQL is a lot more powerful than everyone thinks. So the further we go down this rabbit hole in learning about SQL, the more powerful it becomes, and a lot of people are unaware of it, especially entry-level people. So the first thing you're going to need to do to continue on making the send email more powerful is you have to use this code right here and run it, and then it'll basically turn it on and say, okay, we don't care about security, we're gonna just let it happen. And then there is some code here that we wrote to actually do the dirty work, and I'm gonna hand it off to Martin to explain, because all of this is his code. I understand it, but he's also a good teacher, so I'm just gonna let him explain it, and if I have any questions, I'll interrupt you. Don't worry.
Well, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. So I just want to jump back real quick to this code that we did have to add. Before actually changing, or before actually taking this code, running it on whatever type of box you're using, whether it's going to be test or production, talk to your DBA about it. Tell them what the code
Yeah,
does. That way, then they're going to be on board with it, because this XP CMD shell is basically just like you opening up a command line, and then you can possibly go in there and then do things that could possibly be harmful. Not that you would do it, but that other people have the potential
exactly. It's
to
a
do
big
it.
disclaimer. I will definitely add that to the description.
Exactly. So, yeah, so, like, we just want to be sure that, whoever is using this understands what the risks are, and then, take those concerns to your DBA before you do actually start using this code.
Don't blame us if you get fired.
There you go. All right. So now that we have the disclaimer out the way, yeah, we can definitely dive into this code here. So before I start diving into the code, let me kind of talk about what this code does, and what the objective and what the objective was of it. So when we are sending out DB mail, we want to send out attachments, and there are times that we want to send out multiple attachments, and there are times that we also want to target specific attachments, whether it's going to be Excel spreadsheets, or it's going to be TXT files or CSV files, or maybe it's going to be a certain type of a file name, like employees or something. So I created this so we can change this around dynamically. So a couple parameters are the directory, which is going to be where all of your attachments live at, what the extension is, so for instance, TXT, CSV, and so on, a file name, if you want all of the file names that maybe contain employee, that's what you put in there. And files is what we're using for the output, which we'll talk about later on. And this code here for testing parameters, I always put this in my procedures just so I can test. So I'm coming out this code like that, and then I just run it all the way through. That way I don't have to execute the procedure. I can just do it directly in line.
I want to kind of cut in.
Sure.
You do notice, not you, but the audience, that there are semicolons at the end of the code. It's not a necessary thing. That might be just what Martin prefers, so just don't freak out that you need that everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Semicolons here are definitely optional. I just have a habit of using them. So the first thing we do is we're going to create what the command variable is, and this dir /b basically just says go to the directory, and then the /b just means bear. So just give me in there what the file names are in that directory, and then we're appending to that the directory name. So for instance,
this is what you can use in command prompt.
That's exactly right. Yep. So if you went to command prompt, you put in there dir space /b space, and then you put in there your directory, you're just going to get a list of your file names without having anything else in it. And then what we do is we create a temp table that has in there the directory, and it has in there a file name. Then we insert into it this line of code. So it's going to run this command, and then whenever it returns, it's going to shove it into this temp table, into this column right here, the files column. And then for some reason, XP command shell puts in there a null value, so we're just taking that off right there. And because we don't have the directory within the file name, I'm just doing a real quick update just so I can get the directory in my code. And then what we're doing is we're saying, now that we have all of the different files in here, I want to get the directory that we had in our code above, add to it a /, and then put the file name, so then it would actually look like a direct, or it would look like the whole entire path to it, append, and then adding onto it a semicolon, because there's a possibility we have multiple attachments from our temp table, and this where clause is where really all the magic happens. So for the file name, like I talked about earlier, it's going to work just like you're doing with the 2% signs, one in the beginning, one in the end. So if you're looking for any file that contains the word employees, you just put employees in that particular parameter, then it'll just pick up everything. And for the extension, if you put in there txt, it's going to have to end in txt. One thing I will point out is, let's say that you're doing Excel files, and I know that the newer type of Excel format, I believe XLSX, but there might be older versions as well. If you put in there XLS with a %, it'll pick up XLS, then having after that anything else, just like if you were doing regular SQL. And this code here for XML path is a little bit more obscure. What it does is it takes all of the rows and combines it into just to be one row, and that way we can have all of our attachments all together. And lastly, what this code here does is, if we get multiple attachments, or if we just get one attachment, it's always going to have a trailing semicolon. But we want to take that off. So what we're doing is we're saying, take the files parameter and get the length of it, and then you're going to subtract one character, which will chop off this extra semicolon there. And that's basically what the code does. Anything, Greg, I missed or you want to add?
No, you covered it pretty
Cool.
good. It
Okay.
is very complicated when you look at it just as a high overview, but when you're stepping through it and just thinking about what it's doing, it's fairly simple and straightforward. I think most people, maybe not this part, but most people have done the rest of it, especially if they're already in position, at least like the first 6 months, they kind of have an idea of what all this does, and they've wrote code like this before.
Right. Yeah, and I think that attempt tables are a pretty, I think, basic stuff. Like the same thing with doing updates and deletes. They're relatively basic stuff.
Right.
Um, okay, and then this code here, Greg. Did you want me to cover that, or do you want to?
You can go ahead.
Okay. So what we're doing here is now we're going to take all these different moving pieces and we're going to combine them all together. So what I've done here is I've created a temp table that is called email, and I am putting in there two different email addresses into those temp tables. And the reason I'm doing this is because sometimes you might have email addresses in an actual table, and maybe you want to email out multiple people or just to managers or just to employees, whatever the case is. Well, you can technically use this code here that we're going to write to get all of these different email addresses, get them all together, and then use this attachments tool that we had wrote to also take 10 different emails with 2 attachments, send them to these people, rather than having to type everything yourself. It's a way to do automation, if you will. So let me kind of show you real quick what this code does. So if I run this here, and if I just select star from email, we get something that looks like that. Not very complicated. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to run that again. And then what we're doing here is we notice here for XML path, again, remember it's going to take multiple rows, put it into one row delimited by a semicolon. Then this code should also look familiar to you as well. We're going to chop off the remaining semicolon at the end. So if I run this code, this is what it turns into. It turns into one email address, a semicolon, another email address, and we don't have a trailing semicolon.
Just like you would if you were actually about to email somebody.
Exactly. Yep. So once we get that done, so that's for the recipients part of it. Now we got the attachments part. We execute this procedure. So this is going to be our database name, our schema name, then what we call it. You can put it wherever you want to, whatever schema you want to, and you can also as well rename it as long as you know what those names are. So in this particular example, we are saying that we're going to pass it the directory, which is mandatory. You have to give it a directory. And here's our directory that we're working in. And we're also going to be passing it, we're also going to be getting back what the files are, which is why we declared this attachments variable. So this procedure is going to run, and it's going to return the files variable, which is going to it's going to put those results into the attachments variable. That's exactly what the output means. So if I just run this code very, very quickly, you'll see that now we have a list of our attachments. And just to show you this works, I have up all these different attachments right here. So here are all the attachments that we have. And very, very quickly, I do want to show you how the other pieces work. So we have something called file name, which we can use. And if I say employee, if I go back to my folder real quick, I notice that I have two files that contain the word employee. So when I run this, I should only get two attachments back. And if I expand this out, I do. I get the current employees.txt, and I also get employees.txt. And one more thing I did want to show is, let's say I wanted to remove this, and I'm also going to show the extension. Extension equals XLS. I think is it XLSX? Is that what it is?
I think so.
Okay, so if I just run this code real quick, now we get back only one. But remember that I said you can put a % after the XLS if you have older versions. That way it picks up both. And just to prove that works, we still get back XLSX, even though we don't have the X there, we have a %. So that's a wildcard. And you can also use a file name and the extension together. So if you say, I want to get all of the file names that contain the word employees and that have a extension of XLS with a %, that absolutely works as well. So let me put back the file name, and let's say that equals 2 employees, just so we can get multiple attachments here. And I'll run this, make sure we're getting the correct file name equals, yep, no, that is one reason why we test our code. Okay, so there's that part there. And now we have all of our moving pieces we need. Now we plug them into send DB mail. Did you already talk about this, Greg?
It should be in my last video. Yeah.
Awesome. Yep. So awesome. Yeah. So if you don't have this, check back to Greg's to Greg's previous video where he talks about the send DB mail procedure. So now we can put all these moving parts together, and all we do is we take the recipients and we put it here, and we take the attachments and we put it here, and I think this is the subject and this is the body. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
All right, so now if we just run all of this together. All right, do you want to check your Gmail, make sure that you got it? All right, good. So now you got two attachments. So yeah, that's basically about it.
Awesome. I really appreciate you explaining everything. This is, in my opinion, more complicated as a person starting out, but all the code is going to be in the description for the most part. You'll more than likely have to tailor it to your needs for your particular company because every company's different. I've had companies in the past that did use the old version of Excel, so we did incorporate it, but just make sure that you add your % in there, because my company now doesn't use the old version of Excel, so it allows for more flexibility.
Yes. One more thing I did want to add, which could possibly be confusing. When you're looking for the directory, please note that that directory is not coming from your local machine. That directory is looking in wherever it's going to be hosted at the SQL Server. So if you have on your computer Excel files or TXT files, and then you put in there a directory, more than likely wherever it's hosted at isn't going to have those files. So when it comes to looking for directories, it's important to know that this command is actually going to be run on the SQL Server box itself, not locally on your computer.
I've found that out the hard way several times. So a good rule of thumb that at least I've kind of come to learn is throwing it on the C drive, like in that directory. It's pretty, fluid on every server. It doesn't really change. So it'll be the C:\\, and then it'll be less modifications for you. And,
Yep.
and don't put it on the desktop, because then it goes into like users folder, your username and all that stuff. Keep it simple.
Very true. Yeah, and then like even if you have it on a different drive, you can always change it to like E or F or G, wherever it's located at. So you also have as well like that flexibility too.
Exactly.
And
So I think that's about it. So Martin has a YouTube channel also. If you want to go ahead and plug your channel, be my guest.
sure. Yeah, so you can just look me up. You can look me up on YouTube one of two different ways. You can look up on there my name, Martin Lazarus, and that's spelled Lazarus, or you can look up on YouTube Let's Learn SQL. I should come up.
I've seen a few of his videos. He's very thorough, and some of them are lengthy, but you learn a lot. He's exactly like this video. He's very thorough, and it's less complicated than this video is. They're talking about joins and stuff. Some viewers from my channel may have already known it, but it's good to brush up every now and then.
Yeah.
And learn something new that you didn't know.
Well, thanks, Greg, for having me. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. And everyone else, don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell at the bottom. And I'll keep pumping out videos throughout the week. I'm trying to match 3 videos a week. So yeah, everyone take care and enjoy.